everybody. This is Matt Aloisi from Ohio Health Benefits. And today on our program, our guest is Steve Clark, the owner of Ohio Health Benefits. And he has been gracious enough to join us and talk about the exciting topic of the Part D drug coverage changes that are taking place in 2025 as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. So, Steve, thanks for joining us this morning. So what is all this news about the Part D creditable coverage changes for 2025?
Hey, thanks for having me, Matt. The big news is since Medicare Part D started in 2006, there's always been something called the coverage gap, or more commonly known in the public as the donut hole. And so because the government wanted to try to make Part D as affordable as possible, there was this coverage gap, or this donut hole, was a spot somebody would hit, and then they would be paying full price for their medications. Slowly, the donut hole has gotten smaller over time, but the big news for next year is that the donut hole is totally being eliminated. And so the maximum out-of-pocket exposure, the maximum cost to any one person on Medicare for drug coverage, for drug cost, is $2,000, which is significantly lower than it's been. And so it's just a big change coming for 2025 that we need to prepare for.
So this has a big impact clearly on Medicare patients. Anything else in particular they should expect from this change starting January 1?
Well, so the thing about it is it has a big impact, but it has a big impact on a small percentage of Medicare people. Because the government, CMS, tells us that really only less than 15% of people on Medicare ever experience the donut hole. And of the people that get on it, less than 10% of them ever get to the coverage, or ever get all the way through the coverage gap. The net effect is it's going to have a very, very positive effect on this small portion of people, about 15%. The other 85% of people on Medicare, it's going to sort of have the opposite effect in higher premiums, higher out-of-pocket costs. And basically, that's how insurance works, right? You're taking from the people who everybody's paying into it. The people that are using it the most are getting the most advantage out of it. But again, 85% of people, including most, people on employer plans that would experience Part D coverage, would see a higher cost to them. So higher costs for 85% of the people on Medicare, lower costs, significantly lower on the 15% that will benefit from this.
Well, since you brought it up, this obviously has a potential to have an impact on employers. What should they expect, and maybe what should they be doing between now and the first of the year?
Well, the big thing with employers is, first of all, one is don't panic, right? The nice thing about it is the government does not require an employer to offer creditable coverage. So they just don't have to do that, right? What is required by the employers is they have to report to their employees and dependents of the employees that are on Medicare whether the coverage is creditable or not. And so, again, if an employer decides, or if an employer finds out that their coverage is not creditable next year, Part D credible, then they just have to report accurately. They have to provide the notice to their employees telling them that the coverage is no longer credible. So I think from the employer standpoint, they would want to decide, do I really want to offer creditable coverage or not? And what are the positives to offering creditable coverage, and what are the negatives? The negatives are it's going to be more expensive and maybe even very difficult to find credible coverage on employer plans unless you're running a self-funded platform. And the positive is they may find that more of their Medicare eligible employees are better off to leave the employer plan and go on Medicare and enroll in a plan with Part D. And so it could be a transfer of risk from the employer to Medicare because they're not offering credible coverage.
So it sounds as though to me the broker should be having some discussions with their clients ahead of time, just to kind of outline a plan that it may have a big impact, it may not. But I think the big point that you just made is getting those turning 65 eligible for Medicare employees off the plan, because I think that's a win-win. They get some better coverage, and it's less risk for the employer. So
yeah, for sure. The employer again, just don't panic about it. Don't think, hey, our coverage is not going to be credible. We've got some penalty coming. That's just not the case. We just have to report to the employees. But from the standpoint of the employer, the broker should be working with them to explain those rules and what they have to do and the timing of it. Like, when does it become non-credible? Does it become non-credible on January 1st? Does it become non-credible on renewal? The government has relaxed the standards for January 1st so that most employer plans will be considered credible for next year. But upon renewal time, the rules are changing for that. And so it's educating the employer, and then the broker should be educating and offering to educate the employees on what exactly does it mean if their employer coverage is not credible. What do they do? What's the steps to getting credible coverage? What's the cost to them? What's the positives and the negatives and things like that?
So getting back to the Medicare patients themselves, what steps is Ohio Health Benefits recommending that these Medicare patients do prior to January 1, if any?
Well, because of these impending changes, and because we think that most employer plans going forward, starting with 2025 and renewal, are not going to be credible, then we are advising employees that are Medicare eligible that they should begin the process of looking at enrolling into Medicare. You do not have to be on Medicare A and B to get a drug plan. You only need to be enrolled in Part A. And so what we are recommending is just doing this full evaluation for the employees to explain, should I entirely leave the group plan or not? Should I stay on the group plan and just get Part D credible coverage or not? What's the best option for me? There's part of the answering that question is, do you have a younger spouse that needs the employer coverage? So there's lots of things that go into it. Income can even play a part, because if you're a high income, if you're a high wage earner, you're going to pay more for your Medicare. So there's lots of steps that we're doing to try to educate our employers first and their employees second to help them make the decision. There's just always this major confusion around Medicare. From the beginning, from the time somebody starts to turn 65, there's confusion. There's a lot of good advice, but there's also a lot of advice that's not accurate. And so it's like we want to provide accurate data, accurate information, and make sure that the Medicare eligible employees in a good spot going forward, so that they don't face a future penalty, that they can capitalize on this great Medicare Part D benefit going forward, especially if they use a lot of prescriptions. The fact that they're limiting the cost of the prescriptions to no more than $2,000 is huge. Most employer plans, it's not that low. It's significantly higher than that. Could be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. So hey, if you're using a lot of medications and you're Medicare eligible, you're probably better off to leave the employer plan. But there's other steps. You got to be careful with that. We don't want to mess up a spouse, a younger spouse, and we don't want to get you find out you have a high income penalty that negates the benefits of the lower out-of-pocket costs for the medications.
Well, further emphasizing the need to really talk with a broker such as us at Ohio Health Benefits, just to make sure that you're getting the right and accurate guidance. Waiting till January 1st might be a little bit too late, but as you said, not hitting the panic button, but trying to get your ducks in a row before the year is upon us.
Yeah. You're really just saying, hey, we're helping them figure out what's going to happen in the next renewal. Let's say lots of plans renew January 1st, but let's say your renewal's in May or July or September, whatever it is. What do you need to do in advance to prepare for that? So when that happens, you're ready to go and pull the hit the go button on what you're going to do to implement whatever plan you have in place. Because there's things you can do as an employer, even if your fully insured plan is not credible. There are other tools you can use, like a health reimbursement arrangement, that make the plan credible. But again, it may not make sense to do that. You may be better off as an employer to just not have credible coverage, but educate your employees so they know what they need to do and they get it done in a timely manner to avoid any adverse issues that may come up.
So as we get into January of 2025, what are you recommending Medicare patients or employers do after we've hit the turn of the new year?
Certainly, work with your broker. You want to find out what's going on, learn about when will your plan not be credible. Get that answer out, because you're going to be responsible to notify your employees, and you're better off to notify them in advance of when it's no longer credible. So that's where we would say, once January hits here, it's like, all right, the government has relaxed the standards. They're saying, hey, if your plan was credible in 2024, you can say it's still credible in 2025. However, when it renews in 2025, that may not be the case. So you're just preparing starting in January for when your renewal does hit. And what are you going to do about that? How are you going to help your employees? What is your stance as an employer? Do you want to be credible or not? If you really want to be credible for whatever reason, then we've got lots of tools that we can help make it credible without having to buy a very expensive plan from a insurance carrier that's going to have a really low out-of-pocket limit. Building in a reimbursement arrangement is one of those tools that could help a lot in that case to lower the cost.
Are there any other tips or tricks, guidance that Ohio Health Benefits can offer on this particular topic of the Part D drug coverage?
No, I would say just in general, the tips and tricks are it's super confusing, right? And a lot of brokers will shy away from this because of the confusion. And in the past, it's been easier because most employer plans were credible. Things are changing. So with our expertise in the area, we've been in business 20 years. We've been dealing with Medicare people for 20 years. We have thousands of people on Medicare in addition to our small group employer groups. And so, we feel like we're experts in the area in that we're we're staying on top of this, keeping track of the changes that are coming. There's stuff being released almost weekly on this from CMS as they're clarifying things, as employers and organizations are going back to CMS to clarify what's going on. We're really keeping our finger on the pulse of it, and things have changed. I mean, as a short, just last week, Medicare says, hey, we're going to let you continue to call it credible. We're going to create this demonstration project, things like that. So we're really on top of it to try to keep our employer groups in the know and not be caught off guard or not surprised by something that might happen that they weren't ready for.
The key takeaway is education and guidance. I mean, if that's being done, then whether you're the Medicare patient or you're the employer, you should be in good position to handle however these final changes that come into place and as you get into the new year. But if you're not educating and getting advice from brokers such as Ohio Health Benefits, is going to really put you behind the eight ball.
Yeah, 100%. You want lots of communication. You want to be on top of things and informed of what's going on, so that you don't have any unpleasant surprises lurking around the corner.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, thank you for the time today and your expertise and your knowledge of being in this industry for 20 plus years. Hopefully it sounds like on the whole, this is great news for Medicare patients and hopefully won't be too laborsome for the employers, but we really appreciate the time and input today.
Yeah, anytime, Matt. Thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate the opportunity.